Good morning, members, and welcome to this meeting of the Social Work Services Committee. This meeting is being live streamed and recorded and will be available on the Council website for public viewing. Remote participants, please follow the good practice guidance, which includes muting microphones and switching off your video when you are not addressing the meeting. Write and speak in the Teams chat function when you want to contribute. If you are in the hall, you can do this by your iPhone or iPad. Please don't repeat contributions already made by other members. No material should be posted in the chat function if it is intended as part of the discussion. The usual standing orders apply, including any votes will be undertaken by roll call. If any member wishes to leave the meeting, please either leave the Teams chat for that period of time and write leave in the Teams chat function and then join when you rejoin the meeting so that we can keep track of whether the meeting is correct. All members should speak clearly, taking their time to speak directly into the microphone when making contributions. When referring to reports, please provide reference to the relevant page and paragraph to allow everyone to follow. Please focus contributions on areas where clarification is required or to purpose an alternative to a recommendation. Before we move on to today's business, I would like to welcome Charles Rock, the new Head of Children, Families and Justice Services, to Dumfries and Galloway Council in this Social Work Committee meeting. Item 1, Sedrant apologies and Chair's approvals of members' remote participation. Claire, can you please provide the Sedrant, including who is participating remotely and any apologies, please?
Okay, thank you, Chair. Good morning. I should say that since the papers were published, Councillor Dryburgh has now replaced Councillor Stevenson on the committee. We have one apology this morning, being from Councillor Drysdale, with 19 members present, 7 in the hall, 12 on Teams. 12 on Teams currently are Councillors Bell, Karen Carruthers, Councillor Ferguson, Howie, Jameson, Jordan, Little, McFarlane, Mayo, Wilson, Wood and Young. Councillor Scobie currently not present.
Thank you, Claire, and welcome, Councillor Dryburgh. I confirm my agreement for remote participation of the members participating remotely. Item 2, declarations of interest. Any declarations of interest? No, then we'll move on. Item 3, minute of previous meeting, the 15th of February 2024. This minute is for noting. Are members happy to note the minute? Councillor Darwood.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, members. I realise the minutes are for noting. It's just I note that on page 11 and 12, 5.4 in relation to local authority residential homes, can we be assured that the timescales for this report to come back, Chair, are going to be met? So that would be August, wouldn't it? We'd have the report back. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll pass you over to Stephen.
Thanks, Councillor Darwood. Colleagues in social work and corporate services are currently working together to look at the scoping, so we'll definitely have a report back in August. Clearly won't come with all of the answers, but it will set out process and timescales for further achievements.
Councillor Andy Ferguson.
Good morning, Chair. Thank you. I'm just referring to page 14, and it's strangely sent as a procedure note. We are advised that the committee would receive progress reports regards the recent care inspectorate report, which was, let's just say, not good. Can we get some indication of when we're going to get reports to this committee? Thank you.
Yes, that will be coming to the next committee. Councillor Andy McFarlane.
So, thank you, Chair. Yeah, you can see my computer seems to be playing up. It's in relation to the minutes and something that's actually not there. It's unfortunate that Councillor Drysdale is not available today because she did write to the NHS in relation to the last meeting. And she says, and I'll quote in the letter, "In my role as Chair of Social Work Committee, it was agreed at the recent committee meeting that we wish to express concerns regarding the Right Care, Right Place consultation. I'm sorry, I don't remember that being agreed. And if it was agreed, it should be captured within the minutes. And if it hasn't been agreed and it hasn't been captured within the minutes, I really wanted to check with governance as to the authority under which Councillor Drysdale was written to the NHS in relation to this.
Thank you for your question. As far as I'm aware, it was agreed that she was going to write a letter. I'll pass you over to Stephen. Thanks.
I'm unsure whether or not that was agreed at committee or if it was through cross-party working. Sorry, I just don't recall.
Yeah, I think it was through cross-party working. If I can pass you over to Councillor Darwood. She has a recollection. Thank you.
Thank you. From our perspective, in the Labour Group, it was cross-party. It was agreed as an action, not a recommendation from this committee. And I think all groups were consulted, and some groups took it forward as an action, and Councillor Drysdale took it forward in her role as chair, but it was an action on behalf of some of the groups.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Darwood. From what I can recollect, it did go to all parties, and Councillor Drysdale did ask all parties if they wanted to share in a part of that. Some did agree and some didn't. The letter did go and was passed through the leader, and there hasn't been a response as of yet, as far as I'm aware. Thank you. Can I bring in Councillor Ferguson?
Yes, thanks very much. It was a legacy hand, but I'm pleased you've let me in, because at the end of the day, the chair writes, if she writes as chair of social work, it's because of a decision taken by this committee and not some meeting outside. So if it was cross-party, I certainly, as the social work lead for the SNP group, have not had any sight, or was not consulted in this. So there's a problem here, obviously, somewhere. And I think the major point that Councillor McFarlane was making is that if you're writing as chair of social work, it has to be in the back of a decision from the social work committee. Otherwise, she should be responding as an individual councillor. So I think what we'll need to do is leave it, I would suggest, with governance to go away and check and double check to see in actual fact if it was a decision. And if it was a decision the last time around, I can't remember it. Then we're going to have to amend the minute again later, because if it's not being captured in the minutes, it should be, if it's a committee decision. The point still stands, though, is that the chair should be responding on behalf of the social work committee if she's got a remit from the social work committee to do so, not some gathering outside.
Thank you for your comments, Councillor Ferguson and Councillor McFarlane, on this point. It isn't recorded in the minute because it wasn't at the last committee. I will bring Claire in, as Councillor Drysdale isn't here, but I don't think it's relevant to this committee. I think it should be taken offline, but I'll bring Claire in for this. Thank you.
Yeah, just to confirm, this minute is on the agenda today for noting. It's already been approved. There shouldn't really be any discussion on factual accuracy or otherwise. It's here for noting only, and any other matters should be dealt with outside the committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Claire. So on that point, we'll move on. Are we happy to note the minutes?
Excuse me, Chair. No, I had my hand up. Councillor Ferguson left his hand up as a legacy. I put my hand back up. I wanted to come back in on that, please.
Councillor McFarlane, if it's on the issue that we've just discussed, it isn't on the minute, and we'll be taking that up offline. If it's something else that's relevant to the minutes that are in front of us today for noting, then I'll let you come back in, but if not, then we'll take it up offline.
I just wanted clarification from governance in relation to why do we have minutes come for noting if they've already been agreed? There's no point in having them at all. Thank you.
That's just the agreed practice, Councillor, that the committee has sight of the previous minute, even though it is for noting. Thank you.
Thanks, Claire. I'd appreciate some guidance in relation to how I take this forward then. Thank you.
Thank you. So, are we happy to note the minutes? Thank you. We'll move on. Item 4, duty of candour. Under the duty of candour provisions, we are required to produce an annual report which would detail the number and natures of incidents in which the duty has been invoked. This report confirms that there have been no reported incidents which have met the requirement for the duty of candour provisions. Anybody like to speak or ask any questions? Thank you. Councillor Driver.
Thanks, Chair, and it's me on my learning curve again, back into the social work side of things, and it's actually about the duty of candour. And in this case, it's about tobacco, nicotine and the care situation. I'm just wondering, is that the only areas that the duty of candour is used? I can understand the care side of things and tobacco and nicotine and all that, yeah, I've got that. But is this the only place that an annual report comes back to this? Thanks.
Thank you for your question. I'll pass over to Stephen Morgan.
Thanks, Councillor Driver. This particular duty of candour, as you've stated, comes from the 2016 Act, and it's on all public bodies in relation to health and social care, and it's in specific relation to deaths or significant injury to individuals where there's been fault, and that the public body who's responsible for either the health or the care provision has to make an apology because of fault. So each of those individual organisations have a legal duty to report on an annual basis. That's what this is. And I can confirm that in the 5 years that we've reported, there's been no such incidents for the local authority to report in relation to its care services. There's many other areas of learning as opposed to candour, but candour is part of that learning. So, for example, if we have a serious injury or a death of an individual and a number of circumstances might have contributed to that, we will hold a learning review. We used to call them significant case reviews in the past, but it's learning reviews now. And we would report those through the various committees, and they are through your public protection committees. And there's a formal process for that. So, you know, the learning then, it's decided whether that's in the public domain or not in the public domain, and various bodies, including the Public Protection Partnership, the Care Inspectorate, etc., would decide what's best in relation to that area. So in relation to candour around injury and death, those are the two main areas that we will be concerned with in a social work and social care environment. Hope that's helpful.
Yeah, happy with that response?
Yeah, thanks, Chair.
Any other questions? Councillor Darwood, thank you.
Thanks, Chair. This probably reflects the response just given by the Chief Social Work Officer. The report itself is reassuring, content, and that's great to know. And it's probably tied in with the reporting that you've just commented on. But is there any scope in this in terms of a duty to report near misses or whatever the term would be here? Thank you.
Thank you. I'll pass you back over to Stephen Morgan.
The difficulty with the duty of candour, it's very specific around death and the serious injury element of it. And from a social care perspective, a near miss would almost be impossible to identify sometimes, whereas in a health environment, it might be when you've got, you know, clear clinical operating procedures, etc. So when we're looking at near misses elsewhere, that would come into our other reporting around health and safety. And again, a learning review as an example where we would report other significant events, serious events. We do consider near misses there, and we will look at the learning from that, and we incorporate that into our public protection procedures in that environment. So, so the short answer is no.
Happy with that response. Thank you. Any other members wishing to speak? No, we'll now go to the recommendations. Are members happy to note the outcome of the annual reporting requirements in respect of the provisions for duty of candour are set out in the Health, Tobacco, Nicotine, etc. and Care Scotland Act 2016, the Act as outlined in paragraph 4.2. Thank you. Item 5, Head of Services End of Year Assessment. This report from the Service Director for the Service Plan Performance covers the period of April 2023 to March 2024. This report on performance includes council plan delivery, service plan delivery, change and improvement activities, success measures, and the management of the risks within the service risk register. I welcome the key achievements detailed in section 4.6 of the report regarding keeping the promise, 10,000 voices and joint investigation interview. I also note the significant progress in projects in Appendix 1, highlighting the service's dedication to delivery of council plan outcomes. Within Appendix 1, under Local Government Benchmark Framework, we recognise that there is no data for 23 to 24. This is because the data is not available at this time. The figures are due to be published during the summer, and we will arrange for a report to come to a further committee with the relevant data. And now go to any questions with Stephen Morgan. Councillor Driver.
Yeah, thanks, Sharon. My first one, so I'm learning, and I'm going to ask the questions because of what I've read, and it's on page 30, and I've got a few, Stephen. You might want to take some notes on this. Page 30, P102, P103 is the criminal justice and the MAPA level situations. I know there are exception reports on this, but the question is, on the CPO one, is there any mitigation on or anything that clients who do not turn up for these happening? Because I would imagine that as part of their review of their case, they'll have been told to meet with someone to get a report done. And the MAPA one, which is, I know it's not a KPI, but it's a business, not a statutory performance indicator. And again, there's an exception report on this as well, which is fine. Is the indicator then too high? And the reason I'm asking that is because on page 31, when you've got the sickness absence, which is all in the red at the moment, and we know that there's a high work pressure on social work service staff, is this an appropriate level of key performance indicator because of the sickness absence? And we know that things are going to get a little bit worse before they get better because of the lack of staff that we've got in this particular area, and because of the lack of staff not just here, because of the lack of understanding of whatever a new national care service is going to be and all the rest of the carry on, causing problems with that. And the final one for us is on page 36, which is the risk factor on cyber attack on SWS01, the inability to respond to a large-scale cyber attack. I'm actually quite concerned about the target risk being in green, because whatever we do, regardless what we do and how many times we do it, that risk is going to be high because of cyber attacks by these people like they did in NHS Dumfries and Galloway. I think that the target risk is too low, because we have to always keep an eye on the cyber side of things that's happening within public sector organisations. And I think the guys from BTS will tell you that as well. Because I've asked the question before in other forum committees about that particular thing, because there was very little reduction in the actual risk. So apologies if there's too many questions here, Stephen. I'm just learning.
Thank you, Councillor Driver. Please don't apologise. You are new to the committee. It's absolutely fine. Just before I pass you over, I will say that I had a visit yesterday to Social Work Justice, and even though the staff are pushed to the limits, the morale was really good yesterday. They're a very, very positive team, and the work very hard, and the commitment is phenomenal. It was a great day and a fantastic experience to visit Dumfries prison staff and also the staff in Dumfries at the community payback. So, just to highlight the positive aspects, because I know there has been a lot of negative feedback, but I'll pass you over to Stephen Francis to the questions.
Can you just come back on that particular point? I understand that fully, Chair, because I visited the community project staff in Annan and places like that as well, and the staff are doing a brilliant job. My concern is that their work pressures is getting to them, as opposed to what they can do, because they're brilliant people, and there's no doubt about that. It's about the work pressures as opposed to anything else.
Yeah, no, we take that on board. I'll pass you over to Stephen. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Driver, and I'll just add, absolutely no need to apologise. So in relation to community payback order clients, the target is set deliberately high because we've got to service the court, and there's legal orders and they have to be served. The vast majority is where young offenders, well, they're predominantly young offenders, not all young offenders, but offenders come forward and they don't come on time. We're not punitive with that. We don't immediately return people to court. We try to work with them, we get them back, and they sign the orders pretty quickly. So, you know, and they then serve, you know, and do the unpaid work. So we're confident about that. And as Councillor Hill said yesterday, we were fortunate enough to meet some of the offenders themselves and some of the fantastic work that they're doing in relation to community payback. It was really quite humbling. So I can assure you that we do not take a punitive approach to this, and we look at the positive one so we can engage with people. In relation to MAPA 1 clients, just to remind committee that there's 3 levels of MAPA, and MAPA is multi-agency public protection arrangements, and it's where we deal with dangerous offenders. And MAPA 1 is, and this might sound a little bit silly, but the lowest level of dangerous offender. So that's managed by the team themselves. And you're absolutely right in terms of workload. The number of MAPA 1 clients has increased over the period, and the staffing levels have stayed the same. So whether or not that target's real or not, that's a really good question, and it's actually one that we're considering as a service right now, looking at the pressures. But what we don't want to do is set ourselves achievable targets because of the difficulties that we're experiencing, because we would then get into a debate, have you shifted the goalposts because you know it's achievable? So on balance, it probably is the right target, but what it shows us is that we're unable to achieve it because of something else that we need to address. So I think that's what's good about targets and not achieving them. It gives you the evidence to do something different. And on relation to cyber attack, I mean, clearly it's something that is ongoing in relation to every organisation is getting, you know, attempts on a weekly basis, I believe, from colleagues in BTS. We would clearly want our systems to be so secure that it is in the green. And I'll take that point away and I'll raise that with colleagues in BTS, because we set those targets with their expertise, because I'm a social worker. I'm not a technical expert, so we'll certainly take that back and review it.
Are you happy? Do you want to? No? Okay. Councillor Darwood, did you want to come in?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I have a question, comment, if that's acceptable. My question specifically is about page 36. It's the risk register. And the new SWS05, failure to deliver critical essential services. That's a reasonable risk to put on a risk register, but it's not annotated, so I don't know where we are, what the original risk is, what the current risk is, or what the target risk is. It's not been annotated at all on the report, so it's been overlooked, I think. Whilst I'm not expecting a response at the moment, because that might be quite challenging, could we get a response back at some point in time, please?
Yeah, thank you. I'll bring Stephen in. This is a new, it's new on the agenda, so it was highlighted at our business meeting, but Stephen can speak to you on that. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Darwood. I actually confused myself the other day when I was rereading the papers in relation to this one. And this is new for the coming year. The reason we haven't populated it with the current risk and a target risk is, if I'm being honest, I looked to my right and I see Mr. Charles Rocks sitting there. As the new head of service, I want him and the management team to be involved in setting the risk as we move forward. No pressure, clearly. And I did say to him to do that, I wouldn't throw him under the bus, so I won't ask him to respond to that.
Are you happy with that? Would you like to come back in?
I'm not really happy with that. I think it's not acceptable to put a risk on a report that isn't annotated and isn't actually qualified. If I can make a comment now, if that's okay. And I think I think the answer is interesting, to say the least. This is actually a bit more serious, and it really pains me to say this, but I have serious concerns about some of the information held in this report, and it's mainly in Appendix 1, which concerns the improvement projects, page 23 to 30. We're asked to review these and comment on them, which is reasonable. But to me, review means to assess something formally with the intention of instituting change if necessary. And our group have discussed this, we have pre-meetings as well, and it's impossible to review properly with the information we have in front of us from our perspective. So, for example, the descriptors of the projects are quite vague. There's a line or a sentence or 2 sentences. And I'll give an example. on page 23, and it's basically about improvement projects and delivery. S0131SW. The improvement project is deliver a model of education that meets the needs of the most vulnerable, particularly around care, experienced children and young people, including alternative curriculum required. And that's a laudable thing to do. It says progress 100% and it's been completed, but I have no way of knowing if that's been done or not. And there's nothing there in this report. I know it's a summary, but there's no way, there's no reference against measures of success, objectives achieved, set against the council plan, which is actually mentioned in part 1 of the report. So it's about council plan delivery, it's about service plan delivery or local government benchmarking. There's no reference in this report as to where these things sit on that. So as an elected member, I am charged with holding Dumfries and Galloway Council to account. And again, it pains me to say this, but not being a passive recipient of information. And I can't interrogate that information at all. Our group couldn't interrogate the information. There's no references. You can't go into documents and I'll have a look at anything because I don't know where to look. I do appreciate that previous committees, some of this will have been discussed, but that isn't referenced either. So this is, for me, that bit of the report is opaque, it's poor, and it's not what we should be presented with as elected members. I would suggest that goes back and comes back at the next committee with more information in it so that we can actually review it properly, because we're not able to, there's no way that anybody, even with a crystal ball, could review this information at the moment. And I move that that's the case. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for your comment. I'll pass you over to Stephen Morgan. I think he wants to make a statement on that. Thanks.
Councillor Darwood, thank you for your observations, and I don't disagree. When I read this myself, and if I was making an open statement, what I would say is a lot of the projects are quite specific, but it's not clear in here that they're specific and what they relate to. So the one that you highlighted in particular is a very focused piece of work with a small number of children, and it has been successful. However, you don't know that, and it's how do we then upscale that across the whole of the region to have real success. So what I would say is, I'm well aware that this way of reporting and the way that we access the information from Perth and provide as a summary doesn't tell us the business of social work. And you're quite right that throughout the year, we have discussed some really significant and concerning matters and some successes as well. So as we move forward every quarter, we are going to bring much more detail and data to this committee about the whole social work function, following people's journeys through the processes, through child protection, looked after children, children in need, adult support and protection, the justice processes, etc. So on a quarterly basis, you will have data which will show you trends in as real time as we can possibly do that. You will have professional analysis with what question is being asked. And then at the end of the year, when we come to report on that, we will be reporting in a similar vein, so it will make much more sense. A question and a bit of leeway that I would ask of committee, if it's acceptable, is that you allow us to present and work on that report moving forward, as opposed to review this and bring it back next time, just in terms of work pressures and where we can actually do the work. That might not be acceptable to committee, but I would ask for that leeway.
Councillor Darwood, would you like to come back in?
Yeah, I think I totally understand where you're coming from, and I appreciate your candidness and your honesty about this. This is about us holding directors to account, and we can't do it with this report. What you're asking us to accept here, and I've no doubt that it's true. No, I don't doubt the honesty of the report. But what you're asking us to accept is information with nothing to reference it by. Now, if we're asked to review something, I would be wanting the background information. And I think, with the best will in the world, we cannot as a group accept this part of the report as legitimate because there's no reference information. So I totally understand and accept that from a resource perspective, it's going to be really challenging to do something. And if this can't be brought back, it needs to be minuted that this group, the Labour group, and I don't know if anybody else wants to join us in this one, but I move that it's minuted that we cannot accept that part of the report because there isn't any information to actually do a proper review. Now, that would get around the need to bring it back, and I do completely appreciate the fact that you're going to review how you do things going forward so that we do have the information to be able to say, confidently say to the council and to the citizens of Dumfries and Galloway that we've done our job properly, because with this report, I'm afraid we can't confidently say that. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I'll bring Stephen Morgan back in.
Comfortable, I was going to say happy, but comfortable to do either, whatever the committee wishes. I would just say that, you know, we are spending a lot of time, and it's a small group of staff who work with the data, getting the iteration as we move forward. So we could bring it back, and we can bring you the detail that sits behind Pentana and some narrative around there. So, yep, comfortable in doing that.
Yeah, that's fine. We do have people waiting. But I'll
Is
bring you an
it the same way?
action.
So coming back to what was mentioned before in the meetings, how are you going to record that then? Is it going to be an action? Is it going to be a recommendation or what? Because we don't want to be coming back every time and saying the minutes, we need to challenge the minutes all the time. So just coming back to what we said before, how do we record that?
We'll record that as an action, if that's acceptable. Yeah. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, Chair. I mean, what I'm saying is quite serious here, and is that we don't accept, we cannot, as a committee, and I move this, that we cannot accept we cannot review information when there's not enough information, and this needs to be, you know, if that's accepted by the entire committee, that's fine, that goes forward and that's minuted as such. And I totally accept that the Chief Social Work Officer and his team will work very hard to shift how the information is presented. But it's not acceptable, you know, a very clear statement, it's not acceptable to have this amount of this lack or opaque information in the report which asks us to review something that's actually a year's progress or a year's work by the social work department. We can't do it, and I think that's what I'm trying to say. Although it does pain me to say so, because it's a reflection of a number of things, but I don't think I could sit here as an elected member and not actually comment on this. Thank you.
Yeah, no, that's totally accepted. I'll bring Claire in for the governance on that. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Clearly, members are just starting discussion on this item. So what goes in the minute, I guess, depends where we end up as a committee, whether there's agreement on these points or not. There's provision, obviously, in standing orders where one member puts something forward that isn't supported by others for dissent to be recorded, and there's obviously provision for votes and whatever. But you're just starting discussion on this item, so see where you end up.
If we can move to the speakers, because we have a few more questions, and we'll make sure before we go to the recommendations that we've got something positive in place. Thank you. Councillor Slater.
Yes, thank you, Chair. It's just a comment really to Stephen. It's regarding, obviously go back a little bit to cyber attacks. I believe that it's virtually impossible to stop these attacks. They'll continue on. These people are very clever, could be working for anywhere in the world, and the organisers like us in the health service would just have to try and be one step ahead of them. But they will continue on, I believe, as time goes by. That's just a...
Thank you for that, Councillor Slater. Councillor Jameson.
Thank you. My question and comments refer to page 19 and then again to page 23. But my first question would be the promised partnership includes a number of stakeholders, which doesn't include education and learning. I would like to understand better if that's why education and learning has not been included in that. It's very, very clear that education and learning has a huge impact on delivering of the promise. Secondly, when I move on to page 32, and I'm not repeating what Linda Dorward says, but I agree with everything she said. The comments there are misleading, and there is information. I totally accept that the staff in social services have got stuff to do at the coalface, if you like, but the Education Committee can supply an awful lot of information, and as it happens in the 800 odd pages of the last service, this upcoming education meeting, it includes strong stats that absolutely underline the fact that we are not closing the attainment gap, which impacts on poverty, and poverty impacts on the attainment gap. So the information is there. We know, and the small paragraph here at 1SW, it actually is misleading, apart from not being expansive enough. It's misleading because there's no way that we have addressed 100% the delivery of a model of education for the most vulnerable or care experienced children, because there's no evidence at all. In fact, one of the stats tells me that only 30% of looked after children achieve one or more level 5 against the target of 60%. So we're nowhere near where we are. So we have to have an element of honesty and realism here. And it's disingenuous for us not to require strong and robust challenges to what we're doing. We know there's reasons, we know there's shortage of staffing, etc., but we can't be lulled into a form of almost complacency. These issues are real and they're happening now. And to put something on there is just a wee bit disingenuous, and I understand why we don't have the information. The first question is obviously why are Education and Learning not involved in that partnership? Maybe they are, and we can get an answer to that. But the second question I would, and it kind of backs up what Linda was saying, is that we need more extensive reports. And I've asked about how effectively education, learning and social services work for a number of occasions, as you'll all be aware. And I've still not got the answer. I've got the answer that it could work better, etc. But I really need to get an idea. Social services are under pressure. Guidance teachers are under pressure. CAMS is under pressure. So how best can we optimise the resources to help the bottom 25% in our society in schools? How can we maximise that potential? And we need a really hard, deep look at this, and not a peripheral, or we're meeting here and we're meeting there and there's groups set up. We really need to see what we can do to make a difference given the financial situation that we're in. So first query is, why is Education and Learning not in that partnership? Or if it is, why is it not mentioned? Secondly, I would really like a deep look at how well the agencies work together to achieve tangible outcomes. And we're short of tangible outcomes in this report. And I would really like to see much more extensive and intensive reports from social services in the future. My final comment is that this is no disrespect. I absolutely realise the great work that social services do, but we actually need to be very, very clear on the roles and responsibilities of everybody involved in looking after children. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jameson. I'll bring Stephen Morgan in.
Thanks, Councillor Jameson. In response to the first question, Education are involved in the partnership. The sentence is including, and it just didn't list everybody, so apologies for that, they're a key partner. In relation to where do we bring all of this together and where do we have the conversations about meeting the needs of the most vulnerable, that's through our Children's Services Plan that comes to full council. And it's the role of that executive group to bring all of the different partners across Dumfries and Galloway together to get the very best that we can for children and young people. So that gives the overall reporting in relation to vulnerable children, well, all children actually. In relation to the most vulnerable around looked after, we do have the corporate parenting group, and we're just revamping that, and Lorna Meehan, one of our other directors, is going to chair that, so we have a degree of independence, and that looks at specific data for looked after children, so that's reported separately to this. In terms of reporting going forward, I share your frustration with this report. It's the way that we've reported in the past, and I've had a number of conversations in my one-to-ones with the Chief Executive saying this doesn't tell me what social work does. So I'll give you a descriptor earlier of what we will do as we move forward in relation to the more detailed data, the more detailed analysis of that data, and then the narrative and the concerns that come along with that for yourselves to scrutinise. So as we move forward, you absolutely will get significantly better reporting, Councillor Jameson.
Are you happy with that response? Would you like to come back in?
No, thank you very much, Stephen. And I do realise that I do realise the challenges. Reporting is important, and you could argue that the Education and Learning Committee's 800 and odd pages is too much, but there's an awful lot of information in there that can be banked and can be referred to. I think as councillors, as members, we need to see us delivering on the themes, and the themes that you've identified here under the social works with reference to education as placings of learning that are inclusive, sustainable and meet the needs of local communities. We get it right for every child and children, young people and adults transition successfully through all life stages. You've put that up, presumably that we are actually achieving these things, but we're not. We're not. We might be partially achieving them, but we really need, if you like, to take a political hat off, and we need to show leadership from administration to say, point blank, these are where the issues are, this is how we're going to deal with them, and then we can get on with them. So we really need to get more hard-hitting reports that tell us not only the successes, but where we really need to step up. And then we can help you through our political influences and support you through your tangible efforts that you're doing on the ground. So yeah, I welcome your commitment, Stephen, and I say I look forward to seeing how we can work more effectively and deliver tangible outcomes.
Thank you, Councillor Jameson. If we can move to Councillor Ferguson. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Just picking up on what Councillor Dorward was saying there about the failure, and I can understand our frustration there, but my questions are really about the SWS 01, 02, 03, 04 on pages 37 and 38, and a part of it, the data stuff on page 36. I can understand why we had to put a new risk factor in there, and that the danger I'm looking at all the way through to these other ones I mentioned here is that they're fragmented, and I can understand why we put a new one in there to actually have an overview of all the different risks to see what the greater risk is and what the greatest risk is across here. Because if you go to page 37, for example, SWS 02, shortfall of staff, inability to deliver statutory duties, that's exactly what S05 is. Increased risk to clients by 05, increased risk to community, that's 05, reputational damage, that's 05, and impact on the remaining staff. And then when you look at the mitigations, we use the unallocated work policy and the workload management, and then there's PDRs in there as well. Now, there are exception reports to these ones, but like Councillor Dorward, I'm a bit frustrated is that there's not a lot in the narrative that actually tells us, and these are the risks that are in the red just now, and high up in the red. The SWS02 risk, inability to deliver statutory duties, is the second highest it could get. So we're not in trouble here. I would say we're at danger point. We're beyond having a bit of a problem here. And again, you go over failure to adapt practices in response to decreasing finances within a given timescale, reduction in capacity to support people at risk of harm. And again, when you go SO4, again, it comes in. So all the ones that follow on after that SO5 cover, I would suggest most people is going to be in that SO5. But what the beauty about SO5 would be, it would bring them into one place so that we can see how to interact and work with each other. And just as one example, for example, the unallocated work policy and the workload management, if you then go back to page 31, and there's an exception report in this as well, is the red marks here, percentage of days lost per employee through sickness absence as a percentage of total possible attendances. That's actually 50% up on what the target should be. It's at 6.5% nearly. And again, a percentage of staff who've completed an annual performance development review, 55% as opposed to 95%. The number of days lost, we're looking at 9, and it's almost 15 days. So it's not quite twice, but it's certainly 1 and 3/4 times. So when you take all these different things into consideration, I think it's absolutely critical that we have that SO5 and we have it in place as soon as we possibly can. Now, if I've got that wrong, and I hope I haven't, is SO5 is to bring them all together so we can actually see just exactly where we are. And again in SO2, the unallocated work policy and the workload management, they're absolutely critical, because it's well recognised, that we're recruiting, we're growing our own, we're doing as much as we possibly can here. But I can't help but think what you've got here, of course, is a department that's so under-resourced in terms of people, that we're always going to have this, and it's how we minimise it. And the bit, if I just finished, Chair, I'm going on a wee bit here, is that how do you get from the second highest impact as it is currently down into down in the bottom levels as a target risk? And there's nothing that's telling us how that's going to be put in place straight away. It's given us the long-term view. So I again, like Councillor Dorward, I'm a bit frustrated here that there's no route to tell us. And I think it's a word here, is that latest position box at the end there, isn't it definitive? That you could put sheets of A4 paper in there as a separate file, and give us the information we really need to be able to say honestly that we've monitored and we've calculated the risk and we're supporting the direction in travel. So there's a frustration there. I'm sorry I've gone on a wee bit, Chair.
Thank you for your comments, and I'm sure we're all taking them on board, Councillor Ferguson. I'll pass you over to Stephen Morgan again for a response on that.
Thanks, Councillor Ferguson. I mean, your points are all valid. I think we've discussed the lack of detail in the report that doesn't give you confidence in terms of the performance. However, what I would say is throughout the year we have brought detail to the committee and we've had debate, so we should have done better. I'll just hold my hands up to that in terms of this particular report. The pressures are real, and the target to get into the yellow is a real target, but it's not a short-term target. There's many different things that we have to do in relation to address the current significant pressures that are on our staff across social work and social care. And I won't repeat the efforts that we are making. That will take time. I won't repeat them today, but we will bring detailed information to you in the future in relation to how we're doing with those. Just this week, Charles Rocks, as the new Head of Service of Children, Families and Justice, has already looked at role and function of staff and what we can tweak to make things, or what we can change significantly in some areas, although I wouldn't want staff to panic when I say that, is, that role and function. Do we have the right people in the right place to do the right things? So those things we are actively analysing, but what you don't have in front of you is the detail around the functions of social work. So like specifically around protection, looked after children, children in need, children with disabilities, offenders, older people, younger adults, etc. But we will bring that in the future. We'll bring the data, we'll bring the analysis, and I would be much more confident about the debate we'll have at the end of year when we've had a whole year of data, because I've given you a lot of information and a lot of narrative over the last year whilst I've been in the former Chief Social Work Officer role. But I've also been frustrated that I've not been able to bring the level of data that I want, and we've been working at, when I say we, my team have been working extremely hard to get us to a point where we can bring that data to you. And in August, we will bring that with the analysis, and hopefully you will have a higher degree of assurance, although the data will not be complete in August. It is a difficult task, but we will tell you why it's not complete, where the gaps are, what we're doing about it, and where we will get to. So in relation to SW05, Councillor Ferguson, yes, you're absolutely right. That does capture everything that sits below. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ferguson, are you happy with your response?
Yeah, I'm happy as I could ever be on it, Chair, because I appreciate that for us to get more information, then more officers have to do more work behind the scenes, and that brings a further pressure. Okay, and one of the things we did agree quite some time ago was that we would bring reports back when they were meaningful. Now, I wouldn't say this report isn't meaningful. That's not what I'm saying at all. What I'm saying is that it's very meaningful, but it's a bit shy on evidence-based and things like that. We could probably have put it off for another month and just move the committee cycle or something similar, but that's down to the chair and the governance team. As I say, the frustration's there. I think it's there. You can see it in Stephen's face as well. He's concerned about it. So I think if we're actually really going to support the social work service to take this forward, we need to give them the time, right, and the resources to actually do their job properly, and fulfil, our requirements as a body whose job it is to monitor and the work that they do. So it's. I'm just a bit worried here that if we agree to bring it back too quickly, we would take people off frontline social work, and that would just create a bigger difficulty. So I suppose maybe what I'm saying here is a wee bit of patience, maybe, because when's the next committee after August? Is it October, is it? It might be an option.
Thank you, Councillor Ferguson. Like yourself and like many other councillors, it is frustrating. I think this has been a type of reporting that we've seen over many years previously with social work, and we do have assurance from the Chief Social Work Officer here that we are going to change the way of reporting so that it is a fuller explanation of what's happening across the services. Councillor Wilson, if I can bring you in.
Morning. A lot of my questions have been answered already. I'm just wondering though, on page 31, why there is no data available, and with regards to the average number of days lost through sickness and sickness absence, this is higher than the previous year, and I'm just wondering what's been done to try and improve these figures. I do appreciate that there is an exception report which mentions ongoing recruitment and retention. So I'm wondering what we're doing to recruit more staff and retain our current staff. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I think this is possibly the data that comes out during the summer, so will be reported on. But there is other data that Stephen's going to talk about now. Thanks.
Councillor Winston, thanks for that. The data in page 31, as you refer to, is what we call PACE data, and when we've pulled it off the system, there's a significant issue. The data is not accurate, and we are looking to resolve that. So we will bring that information, but we will be reporting that type of information much more robustly with a series of other sets of information as we move forward. So apologies that couldn't be on the report. In relation to the sickness absence, obviously it's gone up by less than 1%, but we were hoping to drive it down. The pressures that we've spoken about today and over the past year are still on the staff. What we're trying to do about that, lots of different things. We've changed the pay grade for our Grow Your Own so that staff who are already working for the organisation, who continue to work, don't have to take a significant pay drop. We've introduced a career grade, so if we have a vacant social work post, we could also recruit a student into that who then becomes a qualified social worker as we move on. We're about to introduce the senior practitioner, whereby staff at the front line can be paid higher for particular skills and remain. And we're publicising that nationally in terms of our advertisements, etc. We continue to attempt to recruit, and we do get people in, but what we tend to get is a lot of newly qualified workers who can't do the full range of duties, which adds to the pressure. So we're hopeful that when the younger, I say younger, I don't mean in terms of years of age, I mean in terms of years of experience, staff come in. It takes them time, but once they get fully up to speed, they can take on a broader range of duties, and that will ease the pressure longer term. We also have staff welfare sessions and the like, and what we're reintroducing this year is the social work conference, which we used to run annually, and part of that will be looking at staff wellbeing. We'll bring in the Scottish Association of Social Work, do sessions around good quality support and supervision, amongst other speakers. So there's various things in hand that we're doing on an ongoing basis to try and reduce the pressure on staff, but most of these are medium to long term. There are no quick wins, unfortunately.
Would you like to come back in? Councillor Wilson, are you happy with that?
I'm happy. Well, I'm reasonably happy with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any further questions? No. So we're going back to Councillor Driver and Councillor Darwood as how you would want this reported within the recommendations. We can either do it by motion or we can put an amendment in for. I'll let Claire speak.
Chair, at the moment we got one motion on the table proposed by Councillor Darwood, seconded by Councillor Drybra. That is, having reviewed the report, you'd like not to accept the report as it doesn't provide the level of information necessary to effectively scrutinise the performance and for a report to come back. Is there any alternative views?
Councillor Ingalls?
Yeah, Chair. So what the motion's asking for this report to come back to the next committee, is that correct? And we've already had assurance that there will be more detail in future reports through Stephen, the Director. Is that correct? Okay, well, I would propose then that we accept assurances and note this as an action point rather than bringing this paper back. Thank you.
Councillor Darwood, do you want to come in? Then I do have Councillor Ferguson as well.
Thank you, Chair. It's actually that we shouldn't accept this report. I mean, when it comes back, I'm not that concerned about it. It should come back at some point in time, and I do know, or we do know as a group, that Chief Social Work Officer has said that they will review, and the administration has undertaken, after we raised the issue, to review how things are reported, and that's reassuring, and that's good, and that's what it should be. But what we were saying in terms of a motion was that this report should not be accepted by the committee in terms of undertaking to review something because we don't have enough information to do so. So if people are content that we cannot accept recommendation 2.1 because we can't review something we don't have information on, then we'd be content if that was noted to leave things as they are from that perspective. We cannot, as elected members, accept information and say we've reviewed something where there's not enough information to do so. And I think it would be wrong to ask us to do that. So that's effectively what we're asking the Chair and the committee to do, is not to accept recommendation 2.1 because it's impossible to do so. We don't have the information. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Darwood. I'll just bring Councillor Ferguson on.
Thank you, Chair. Linda, sorry, Councillor Darwood, a bit be proper here. I don't think we can not accept the whole report because there are parts of it that are relevant and that we're happy with. We've not talked about. It's that one specific part that we were talking about there, the SW05 not being populated as yet. Then you've got an acknowledgement from the Chief Social Work Officer that, in fact, that SO5 includes the SO2s, SO3, SO4, and it kind of brings them all together. So I'd be of a mind probably to say is that we would review. We've reviewed it, but we've got a specific concern about the one SO5 and ask that that be brought forward as soon as reasonably practical, and bringing together the risk factors that immediately follow it and that are going to be covered by that new risk to the earliest possible opportunity committee. Because I don't understand why we would not accept some parts of the report that we're comfortable with and we're happy with and we've had no questions on. So I'd be happier if we could isolate the bit that we're unhappy with. And I think when we're in agreement on that, Linda, and that's that SO5 needs to be populated, it needs to be populated as soon as possible. So, I mean, would you be minded if we were to go down that route rather than knocking the whole report back to come back to the next committee? Because remember, there'll be a next tranche of performance reports coming through. But I'm in your hands there, Linda.
Thank you, Councillor Ferguson. I'll just bring Councillor Dryber in, and then we have Councillor Karen Carruthers, and then we have Councillor Linda Darwood. Thanks.
Thanks, Chair. I think it's probably easier if and more plainer if I suggest this. I mean, 2.1 it says review the summary. I think 2.1 if you say note the summary of the performance. 2.2 we've scrutinised the exception report and consider. And 2.3 the report comes back with further information on the issues that were raised during the conversation. And you know, that information can be scrutinised easier.
Thank you for that, Councillor Dryber. I'm sure Claire's writing something up now. We'll just go to Councillor Karen Carruthers for her input, and then we'll make a decision. Thank you.
Hi, Chair. Thanks for that. Obviously, Councillor Dryber's come forward with something, but I'm more than happy if it's not been seconded, if required, to second Councillor Ingalls, but we'll see what comes forward at the moment.
Thank you for that, Councillor Carruthers. Councillor Darwood, did you want to come back in? Or are you quite happy with Councillor Dryber's suggestion?
I am, but it's making the point. It's not the report that I'm denying. It's the action. We're asked to review something, and reviewing something is impossible if you don't have enough information. So it isn't the report that it's not, you know, and it's just saying we don't have the information to review the report. And I think through the discussions that we've had as a committee, that seems to be coming forward. I get Councillor Ferguson's point about the risk, the an annotated risk, but it's the whole report. It's not reviewable because there isn't enough background information to do so. And I think that should be recorded. So it's the action, not the report itself, if that makes sense.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Slater, a last comment on that?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Regarding this, Stephen, obviously the amount of work it goes into these reports and to bring them up and more information, that is putting a lot more pressure on your part of the organisation. Now, the fact is, to do this extra work, you're going to have to take time away from other things as well. And I think it maybe do you need more staff to produce deeper reports? That's very important to me. So if people want deeper reports, it'll take more time to write them up, and it'll probably take a lot more people to write them up as well. So I think that has to be taken into consideration as well. I understand that people are wanting more and more information, but it's a time as well, and to write these reports up, and possibly, as the councillor there said, it should be given a bit longer time to try and get it more information out. That's just my comments really. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for your comments. I'll bring Stephen Morgan in there on that point.
Yep. We'll bring a report back to the next committee if that's what's wished. We'll get the detail that you need, and I'll prioritise the work. It will not impact frontline practitioners, but it will impact back office staff, if I use that phrase. And it's a small team, but we'll just reprioritise work. And we'll deliver what the committee requires, because it is really important. This is about Dumfries and Galloway's vulnerable people, so we'll do that.
Thank you. Can I bring Councillor Ingalls in?
Thanks. I think Councillor Dryber's suggestion sounded really sensible. Yeah. Can I just ask actually to go back over that again, just to get that clear in my mind? Thanks.
Yeah, Councillor Dryber, we have got some words if you want us to read out and then see if you're in agreement with those. Claire, do you want to make the changes? Well, read the changes and see if they're sufficient.
Well, thank you, Chair. What I picked up at recommendation 2.1, it was to change review to note. Recommendation 2. No other change, but additional recommendation 2.3 to report back with further information addressing the issues raised.
Committee's happy with that. I know Councillor Slater, you still have your hand up. Is that a legacy hand? And Councillor Ferguson, is that a legacy hand, or are you wanting to come back in on that point?
If I can come back in, Chair, the only word I'd put in there was at the earliest, because if you leave it bland, I'm not saying that for a minute they would do it, but we need to be precise here. We need to say we want this information as soon as it's reasonably practical, and get it in front of us. Particularly as it's a new risk, and we should be monitoring how it's going on the way through the department business. Because I'm talking about the SO5 in particular again, because that's where the bulk of the angst has been today. But I do take Linda's point that there's a scarcity of any meaningful dialogue in some of the columns here, and maybe that's a learning that can be taken back to the team, Stephen, just to actually, rather than shorten words, expand and just make sure that we are fully aware of the entire circumstances. And I think that's kind of where Linda was, or Councillor Dawood was aiming for there. And I think if we can do this sensibly without having to go to a vote, then that's the way we should be going. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ferguson. I don't think it's going to need to a vote. I think we're all singing from the same song sheet when it comes to a more thorough report coming forward. And as we have had assurance from the Director, that's going to happen. I'm sure that all the information is there, and I think this has been a reporting process that's happened over many years now, and we have got the assurance from Stephen Morgan that he is going to change the reporting process so that we do have a lot more information moving forward, and then things can be reviewed and decisions can be made for the best of the people of Dumfries and Galloway. So the report will come back to the next committee, which is in August. So if we have everybody's agreement on that, we'll move to the recommendations. So 2.1, to note the review of the performance of the social work service plan for the period of the 1st of April 2023 to the 31st of March 24, which includes council plan delivery, service plan delivery, change and improvement activities, success measures, service-specific council-wide, including health and safety and local government benchmark framework, and the management of the risks within the Service Risk Register Appendix 1. And 2.2, scrutinise the exception reporting and consider whether the actions proposed are adequate and improve performance for future monitoring of areas which have not met the target in Appendix 2.2. And 2.3, report back to the next committee with further information addressing the issues raised at this committee of the 16th of May 2024. Are we in agreement? Thank you, members. We'll now move on to item 6, which is the PPC minutes for the 12th of December, that's Public Protection Committee, 12th of December 2023 and the 20th of February 2024, and these are for noting. I will just point out that representatives from Social Work and Dumfries and Galloway councillors were not present on February the 20th because it coincided with the last Social Work Committee that we had. Are we happy to note these papers? Thank you. Item 7, any other business? I have no other business, and I thank you for your attendance and participation today. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Chair.